Mike Samet alongside Harper LaBelle. And Harper, we've got a little bit of a special show today. Typically we talk business, but today a little bit more casual, a lot more fun because we're sports guys.
Yeah, what was the Mike Myers character where he sat and it was called Coffee Talk? Remember that? And today it's going to be a little
Saturday Night
different.
Live
We're going
skit.
to have a hockey talk.
It is our pleasure and my pleasure to be joined by the great Dan Bouchard. Now, if you're an old-time hockey fan in Atlanta, you know Dan Bouchard. He was the starting goaltender for every single year the Atlanta Flames were here from 1972 to 1980. Dan, welcome to the Business RadioX studio.
My joy, my joy.
So this has been something that Harper and I have been talking about for a long time because hockey's back in the news lately with Atlanta possibly all the talk about getting maybe a future NHL franchise, and we'll talk about that later in the show. But let's talk a little bit about your career coming up. I didn't know this until I met you a couple of weeks ago at a Cat Rangers golf tournament. You were drafted by the old Boston Bruins.
Exactly.
The big bad Bruins back in 1970?
69.
69. You know, I grew up in the Boston area, big Bobby Orr fan and so forth. So you were there. I remember Jerry Cheevers, Eddie Johnson were the goalies. But you came up with the Boston Bruins. How did you end up with the Atlanta Flames?
Well, I was playing with the Bruins farm system and played in Hershey my first year. My second year, I ended up playing with the Bruins and the Braves. Well, we had the Braves and the Bruins in the same building. We were in the American League, Bruins. And, you know, hockey was so big in Boston, they're selling both 1 o'clock game and 7:30 game. They were sold out, so they had a lot of doubleheader for hockey in those days. I ended up with the Bruins during the Stanley Cup playoff. I was the third goalie. The year before was a guy called John Adams, or 2 years before was a guy called John Adams, who was the third goalie, but he ended up getting traded, so... And then the World Hockey came along, and then the NHL added 2 more teams expansion, Atlanta and the New York Islanders came on at the same time.
Okay. And so you got drafted by the Atlanta Flames.
I got drafted by the Atlanta Flames.
Here's a kid growing up in Quebec, in that area, and now you're going to the Deep South. Did you know anything about Georgia, anything about Atlanta?
No, I did not know. I got drafted, and then I came to Atlanta the first time I came to Atlanta was July 6th. And right after July 4th, we ended up going to the baseball game, the Braves, and there was nobody there. It was easy to get tickets, and we went to watch. But I came to the city, and that was kind of amazing. I fell in love with the city. You know, Atlanta, right across from Piedmont, Piedmont Hospital, there was a place where it shows the population. And I always remember it says 497,000 people. You know, it was just a country town, and there was nothing. You know, the 75 ended up at Delk Road, and that was it.
Did you speak much English back then?
Oh, yeah, I spoke English. I was fluent in English. I was brought up in Montreal, and mostly all the kids that played hockey in Montreal learned both languages. As a matter of fact, my last year, I did my high school. I went to high school in London, Ontario. That was my pretext to jump league. And then ended up going to learn all the languages and the English and French together. I did all the different subjects, biology, you name it, so I could be fluent. And I waited for the scholarships, and I got scholarship at great places like Harvard and all that, and Boston College and Michigan Tech.
But hockey was your love.
Yeah, hockey was my love, so I did not know. So I decided when I turned pro, I would sign with the Bruins. And I like Boston, you know. The first time I went to Harvard, well, that was kind of, I did not know what Harvard was.
We have stories about hundreds of different guys that you played with. Bobby Orr being one of them, right? Didn't he call you, he had a nickname for you, didn't he call you Plant? Tell us a little story about that.
Yeah. Bobby Orr, when I first went to Boston, I had brand new equipment, and I have those steel balls like they play in French, a French game called pétanque, where they use those steel balls to roll. It's like bocce, similar to bocce. And I used to take those steel balls and put it in my gloves. Steam the glove and put the balls in there, and then they would make the glove.
To help form the leather, right?
To form the leather.
To break in the glove and your blockers.
So in those days, you tried to, you had to do it quick because the equipment was not broken in as they get it all prepared now.
Yeah.
So anyway, the trainer, he went to grab the glove, and one of the ball fell on his toe. And I used to tell him, be careful, just be careful when you go around my equipment. I got some heavy balls up there and all that. And Bobby Orr was standing there when I was telling him. And Bobby Orr turns around and says, where'd you learn that? Oh, I saw Jacques Plante when he was with St. Louis Blues in London my last year junior. He used to put the steel ball in there, let him sit after he had practice because the sweat and all that, it helps break the glove. So he started to call me Jacques. Hey, Jacques, and all that. So that was a funny part.
No, it's Dan.
No.
It's Dan. No, for Bobby Orr, it's Jacques. It's your special name.
Well, they're probably thinking these crazy goaltenders. How did you become a goaltender? What led you to that position?
You know what? It was funny. I remember that I was 7 years old playing youth hockey, and we had each parish had their teams. And my coach was Jacques Lemaire's father. And he coached me my first year. And I always remember I was playing defense. And one day we go to play this place and called Riverside. And it was a bad deal that day because you had the wind in your face and the sun in your face for 2 periods. So the guy that was our regular goalie, he decided he's not dressing. So Mr. Lemaire walks in and he says, Michel, you're not even dressed, I already had one pad on. He says, who's going to play goal? And I put my left leg up. I had the pad on. I said, I'm going to dress. So I dress. We won the game. We won the game 1-0. So he told me, you're pretty good. You like to play goal? And I says, yeah. I played for 2 years, and then I ended up playing higher level. And I was 12 years old, and I'm at the rink, and there was a junior league in the Montreal, the Metro League, and there was a scout called Chuck Cato. And Chuck Cato is a guy that drafted Bernie Perron. I'm 12 years old, and this scout's talking to me, and he says, you're very special, He says, how would you like to play in the Bruins organization?
At 12?
At 12 years old. And I said, I'd like that. I said, sure. He had already picked Bernie Perron. He had picked some good ones.
Kelly, Rudy is a friend of mine, and Kelly said when he started, he was one of the better skaters on the ice, and they wanted to have the best skater in the net. Was that kind of the case for you as well? You were one of the better players?
I was playing my junior hockey in Sorel, and one year we had a guy called Oscar Aubuchon.
That's not Orest Kinderchuk, but it's pretty close.
Yeah,
Oscar, what is it? Aubuchon.
Aubuchon. Okay. He played for the New York Americans, and he was our coach. He came out of nowhere. Nobody knew Oscar Aubuchon. All of a sudden, he was our coach, and he comes in and he says, look, you skate well, but he says, I want you to skate better than that. He says, you see that girl over there? She's the best figure skater in the area. You're going to learn from her. And I had to go at 4 o'clock after my school for an hour and learn figure skating, learn my hedges and all that. It's good to be a good skater when you're a goalie. And you're right, Kelly Rudy was a great, very, very good skater.
Our guest, by the way, is Dan Bouchard. Folks in Atlanta, if you follow hockey, you remember Dan Bouchard as the great goaltender for the Atlanta Flames for all these years, from 72 to 80. So getting back, Dan, you grew up in the Montreal area. You're drafted by the Boston Bruins. You spent a couple years in the Bruins minor league system, their number 3 goalie during the heyday of the Big Bad Bruins, by the way. How did you end up getting, obviously, they couldn't protect everybody. You get taken by the Atlanta Flames when they come into the league in 1972.
I come to Atlanta in 1972. My wife, I was in nursing in Toronto, and I went back. I went back 3 days later after I'd been in Atlanta. And my wife says, how'd you like it? I said, it's beautiful. It's got trees everywhere. And I says, it's a country town.
The Braves, the Falcons, and the Hawks all came in right about the same time, and we went from no professional sports, and then by 72, when you get here...
That was Tom Cousins. No, that was his vision. Tom Cousins always said that if you have pro sport, because when he bought the Hawks from St. Louis, he says, we need to have a team, and it's when he got Pistol Pete. And the sad part about Pistol Pete, he was so far ahead of his time.
Yeah.
In Boston, John Havlicek and Bill Russell would be on the court. We go. I like to shoot basketball. We used to go and Russell and Havlicek, they were great guys, But when I got in with Pistol Pete. I mean, day and night. And Tom Cousin says, you built your team. You got to have a team for city recognition, city career. So when the Flames came in, we got into the NHL, and the savior of the thing is the Omni wasn't finished. We had to play our first 18 games on the road. That was really the saving thing that happened. That's how our franchise got so good so quick.
Yeah, I mean, you guys played, it was strong, good hockey, and you had a strong following, too. A lot of people think, the Atlanta Flames left, but you guys, I mean, you packed the Omni for many, many years.
What? There was a guy that was the accountant for it's good to get close to accountant, when you work for a team.
You want to know the money man, Dan.
You know if you're going to get paid, but the accountant, I used to talk to him, and he says, if it wasn't the Flames, he says, the Hawks wouldn't have lived, wouldn't survive. He says...
the Cousins owned both the Flames and the Hawks, and probably the Omni also.
Yeah, okay. He owned it. There was 5 owners in the group.
But what happened there at the end? Then he was in real estate or something. Then real estate, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dan. And then the real estate market kind of collapsed, and he had to sell the team.
Well, that's not what. That's not what really happened.
Okay, what really happened? Because he ended up selling it for what, $1 million to Nelson Scalabania, who Calgary. Oh, we're gonna get the real story here.
You're not in the ballpark there, buddy.
Okay.
Okay. What happened is I go to the All-Star game. I had a guy. I was a guy that signed the first year I signed in the NHL. It was Eagleson that signed me. And when he signed me, I go in the office for the Cliff. That's my first thing when I get to Atlanta. And Cliff puts a contract in front of me, and it says 2 years. And I look at it, and I'm reading the contract. And Cliff says, "What the hell are you doing?" I said, "Mr. Fletcher, I'm reading the contract." He says, "You're reading the contract?" I says, "Yeah." I says, "My grandpa told me one thing. Well, I always remember that." He said, "Fine businessman." I says, "The big letter give it, the small take it away." So I'm reading the contract.
What, he's expecting you just to sign, not even look at it?
Yeah. The guys in those days, whatever your agent said, that's okay.
Well, you really didn't have any negotiating power back then.
But I'm a goalie. I'm stupid. They're supposed to be stupid on top, So anyway.
But you got your degree and everything.
Yeah,
and you know how to read in 2 languages.
I knew how to read in 2 languages. So I told Cliff, I says, "No, it's a 1-year contract."
You wanted 1 year. They were offering you 2.
Yeah.
Why?
So
I would think it would be the reverse.
No. The World Hockey was coming. The next year, if I have a good year, I can
go to the other league.
I have some leverage.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so Eagleson, they put him on one of those boxes. They used to have the old box. You ever seen Perry Mason when they flick the buck when the talk on the phone and all that? So,
the little intercom system.
Yeah, the little intercom system. So, Fletcher says, "Danny doesn't want to sign the contract." He says, "He only says it's for 1 year." Eagleson tells me, "You stupid frog, just sign that thing." It's a frog. It's a French-Canadian player. So that was kind of, it's like the N word in Canada.
Yeah.
So anyway.
He's degrading you.
Yeah. So I says, Mr. Eagleson, I says, I just fired you. And I told Cliff, "You want me to sign for your team, you're going to give me a 1-year contract, or in 40 minutes I'll be out of the building."
And you got the 1-year deal.
So he gave me a 1-year deal.
How much did you end up making that year?
That year I made $40,000. I got $40,000. And Cliff says, it's kind of stupid. You're not even proven. And I says, "Look, you draft me. We're 2 goalies right now. And I said, I got 1 goal. I says, you see, I have a dream. It's written down. And I'm going to be number 1 goalie for Atlanta. And it's the way it's going to be."
And you were the number 1 goalie their entire history in Atlanta. So
anyway, because
you bet on yourself and you won that bet.
Well, there was not a bet. You got to. I did the Dale Carnegie course that Bobby Orr had given to me because I was not able to get a ring for the Stanley Cup like the other guys. The third goalie 2 years prior.
That was what, 72 when the
72
Bruins
against
won?
the Rangers, yeah. So Bobby says, I got in the mail one day a Dale Carnegie course, and I went to Montreal and I took the Dale Carnegie course, and it's the best thing. That's the best gift.
So you didn't get the ring; you got Dale Carnegie course instead.
Yeah, and I learned how to build the dream. I learned how to deal with people, how to encourage players.
In your 8 years that the Atlanta Flames were here, and you were the number 1 goalie every single year, was there ever times during that 8 years where you almost left, had opportunities to leave?
No, I never, because I was...
You loved the city, you loved everything
It was
here.
great, but again, when I had this new agent after Eagleson, I fired Eagleson. I hired this guy called.
That's a whole other story, Harper, with Eagleson. We know what happened there.
Yeah. I hired, but I got him back though.
Eagleson?
I got him back. Yeah.
Okay. For those that don't know, Eagleson was famously Bobby Orr's attorney.
Yeah.
Ended up being a scam artist.
Okay, yeah, exactly.
Stole a lot of money.
Exactly. But
you got back at him.
You're preceding me now. So, but anyway, it's okay. Your story is right. When I went to Boston the first time, Bobby Orr looks at me and he says, "You're in trouble with the Eagle." I says, "I'm not in trouble in the Eagle." I said, "Bobby, he's a crook." I says, that's when he signed with the Chicago.
How did you know that? Because this was before anybody thought.
Well, he tried to screw me. I says, look, he tried to screw me. I says, I want a 1-year contract. I says, I was ready to play. If you believe in yourself, if you can't bet on yourself, who's going to bet on you?
Yeah. It's good, by the way, again, and going back to history, late in life, Bobby Orr, I mean, when he retired, practically broke. Eagleson has stolen all his money.
Yeah, because they had offered him 20% of the team, and he never got it.
Yeah. Okay. So you said I was a little off with the Tom Cousins and what happened there at the end of the night.
No, but he didn't. So you were off because I went to the All-Star game.
What year is this?
In '79. Capstein had always about 22 to 25 players in the All-Star game. He was the agent, super agent. He was the Jerry Maguire. He was, always on the phone, this, that, everything. But he was the best agent, He loved the sport. So I go to All-Star game, and Gene Tennis and Raleigh Finger says to me, come to our meeting. We're going to have a players meeting with the MLB. We're going to go over the numbers. So I says, okay. In those days, I was doing stuff with an actuary here in town. I was learning the actuary business, what it was about investment and all that, and money and this and all that. So I go to the meeting, and I'm sitting in the meeting, and I says, where's all the money in the NHL? The guys in the pension. You had guys in Montreal that had 9 Stanley Cup in their fingers, and they were getting $4,700 a year for their pension.
Baseball led the way.
Baseball,
in terms of thinking ahead,
players
not
union.
only your career but after your career.
Big time. Baseball business was so far ahead. So
how fortunate were you to have Gene and Raleigh? Now Raleigh was with Milwaukee at the time.
No, Raleigh was with Oakland too.
He was still with Oakland in '79.
Yeah, 70.
Yeah, I don't think early '80s he went to Milwaukee.
Early '80s he went to Milwaukee. But anyway,
they were part of the Swingin' A's, right?
So I got all the numbers, and the guy starts to gives me, and I says, give me the algorithm, and I says what's your algorithm? And there's another thing that we talk about. And he says, I'll give it to you. He says, you know how to read that? I says, yeah. I says, you guys don't match. I says, you're in the NHL, we all match. And I says, that's what bothers me, because all those players over the years always match. And very often, some of the teams, they give you your pension and they match. And those guys retiring with, $7,000-8,000 after 8, 9, 10 years they've played in the NHL, it didn't work. Guys that played 12 years in Major League Baseball, at age 45, he was getting $42,000.
Yeah, you didn't have that retirement plan or pension or anything.
I said, there's money missing. So I said, there's something wrong. So I got back from the players' meeting. I got all their algorithm. I go and sit with the guys who I was working with, and I says, I found something. Well, I found some money that the NHL owners are stealing from the players. Oh, he says, you better be careful how you approach that. So he looked after me by the end of the week.
Now, were you the player rep with the?
No, I was not the player rep.
Did the NHL have
No,
a players association?
it was not the player rep, because all the player reps that played was in the NHL. They were all represented by Eagleson on each team in the NHL. You see, he had the wagon circle.
Sure, he did.
He had the hands on.
Right.
So Carl Brewer used to say there's money missing somewhere. And when you had a guy that was a defenseman in Boston used to say, Eagleson is they're stealing money, there's money missing. The Players Association are not doing a fair job to represent the players. So he was right.
Because Eagleson was not only the top agent But he also was the head of the players union.
Yeah, he was the.
But none of that money was trickling down to the players. It all was going into his pocket.
It was going to the owners. He was in bed with the owners.
Okay.
Yeah.
When he went to Florida, he stayed on Wirt's yacht. He was getting all the perks.
Okay.
So there was some shenanigans going on.
Oh, yeah.
And you were exposed to some of that. But in terms of Atlanta, didn't Cousins want to?
No. But what happens? Numbers don't lie. That's when you learn. Once you start to learn actuary work and all that, numbers are very accurate. They build the picture. So the guy by the end of the week says, Danny, you're right. He says, how much money? I said, we're about $77 million missing the players till.
In the fund.
The players.
Right.
And he says, that's pretty bad. So he said, what you going to do? I said, I'm going to call Tom Cousins. So I called Tom Cousins. And I says, Tom, I'm going to bring you a paper. I got a format. I got a logarithm. And I said, the algorithm. And I says, you go check everything out. I says, you can have your businessman, whoever, call me, or we can meet with you and we could show you. But I says, the owners are stealing money.
He was one of the owners.
Yeah, he was one of the owner. And I said, I remember you gave me a Bible, when my first year in the NHL. And I says, I know you're a man with your word. You're going to check it out. So he said, Bouchard. He said, on you. You're a goalie. He says that to me like that. You're a goalie. How the hell would you know anything about money?
Again, the inclination is that goalies are dumb, but you broke the mold.
But anyway, so I says, Mr. Cousin, just look at the numbers. I says, don't go that I'm a goalie. Don't go. I says, I'm right on.
But that was his polite way of saying, you're starting to meddle in some areas you shouldn't be meddling with.
That's
Fair
right.
enough, right? Is that
That's
close?
Right. That's right. Eagleson had insulted me, and he shouldn't.
Yeah. Well, Curt Flood in baseball ended up being the first one to test free agency. And guess what happened to Curt Flood? He never played another pitch.
No.
Not another inning. They found a way to get rid of him. And I know that there were some high walls in between owners and players in all sports. Mm-hmm. Basketball had their issue. Football certainly has had theirs. Baseball was trying to break that barrier.
That's right. And
kind of lead the way.
Baseball had done that. And you see, I had a baseball agent. And when I signed my second year of the contract, because the first year the Flames almost made the playoff, and the money guy for Tom Cousins overseeing, he came in from Philadelphia. He said to me, he told my agent, I'm going to give Dan an 8-year contract. Mm-hmm. My second year, I got an 8-year contract.
Which is huge back in those days.
Oh, those days, nobody knew.
How are you going to play 8 years?
But nobody knew I had an 8-year contract.
Oh, wow.
That was a big secret. No, the guy gave me an 8-year contract. And my agent, in those days, he says, well, they're going to give him the upfront $250,000 tax-free loan.
72 or 3?
73.
Oh, my goodness. $250,000.
I got $250,000 loan up front.
Right.
Tax-free loan.
Bought some acreage in Marietta.
It was 18%. No, the interest in those days was 18%.
Yes, it was, right.
And all these owners were stealing the money at 18%. I caught them 8 years later.
Okay, so Dan, you confront Tom Cousins, the owner of the Atlanta Flames in 1979, saying, okay, hey, I can see that the owners are funneling some money here.
He looked at everything.
Right.
And all of a sudden, Sarah Rosewood was a girl from Australia, was his secretary. She calls me, Mr. Bouchard, you're going to meet Mr. Cousin and Mr. So-and-so, the guy was with the guy that started Equifax. And he says, you're going to sit down with him. And he says, we're going to give him the papers. He says, he's going to look into it. But he says, so far, you're right. Mr. Cousin wants to talk to you. So we got at Peachtree Country Club. We sat there. We had the famous vegetable soup and the and the biscuit and all that. And Mr. Cousin says, well, Bouchard, I'm going to tell you one thing. You're right in one place and you're wrong on the other thing. But he says, we're stealing from the players. And
owners are screwing the players.
And he says the players are the engine of the sport. So he says, it can't happen. And he says, what are we going to do about it? Well, I says, first of all, you got to recognize it. that's $77 million, this money missing. He says, okay, I'm going to find it. So Tom says, I'm going to give you all the information. But when Tom Cousin went to the meetings at the Breakers that November.
Owners meeting?
Owners meeting.
Okay.
Well, we were playing in St. Louis. And I remember waiting in front of the bus that night. We were going to the arena in St. Louis, and Cliff Fletcher comes over and says, you big blink bout, Bouchard. He says, you think you're a genius, you think you're smart and all that. I says, Cliff, there's guys in Montreal, guys that won Stanley Cup. There's guys like Ted Lindsay. I says, those guys were the pioneer of the game. They're getting nothing for their pension. If I know about it, I don't say anything. I'm worse than the owner stealing. And he says, why you stick your nose in something you don't know? I says, that's where you're wrong. I know a little bit more than you do.
Was Cliff Fletcher the general manager of the Flames the whole time they were here?
Yeah.
Okay, so he's upset that you're rocking the boat, that you're sticking your nose in there. The owner of the Atlanta Flames says, you know what, Dan, you're right. Players have been getting screwed by the owners all these years. There's all this money missing.
But I've got to go look into it, and then he goes to the owners' meetings, and everybody tells him to be quiet, don't they?
Does he bring it up at the owners' meeting? He does.
He brought it at the players' meetings, and they told them.
Was he kicked out of the NHL? Is that why he sold?
Well, why do you think the next summer we were gone?
They're in Calgary.
Because the story is that he sold real estate was going down. He needed the money.
Oh, he was going in bankruptcy. He was in the receivership.
And Nelson Scalabania offered him, Calgary businessman offered him $1 million for the franchise.
Scalabania was only a flim-flam guy. It was the people, the oil guys. The bottom.
So did he sell the team because he did need the money, or did he sell the team because the NHL wanted him out?
No. He needed the money, and the NHL was not going to let him stay. And Calgary had just been announced as the next city for the Winter Olympics. They needed to have a professional team in Calgary.
Do you believe Cousins, the Flames owner, was on the level guy? And
he was on the level because he told me, he says, you not minding your own business was indirectly a saving grace for me. He says, I had 157 family working for me, and he says, I was going to declare bankruptcy. I was going to drop him. And he says, all of a sudden I get a $20 million injection from Calgary. And he says he still owed $4 million on the $6 million franchise they hadn't paid.
How much did Cousins end up getting for the team then?
About $24 million.
There's a book in here. I'm telling you, Dan's got all this stuff down. The first time I heard this, I was fascinated.
Tom Cousin, his saving grace was his honesty. And through his honesty, he saved his business. And the rest... he started to do big deals with Deutsche Bank and all that, and he built $1 billion empire. Okay,
so the Flames are now in Calgary. Tom Cousins is out of the NHL. When does this come to a head? What happened? Do the owners just make believe it, sweep it under the rug, nothing ever happened? Or
nobody knew what really happened. Nobody knew what happened. What happened is after that, I didn't say anything.
Because you played half a year in Calgary, ended up going to Quebec for a little bit.
Then I go to see Fletcher to ask him to trade me. He said, no.
Do you continue to bring it up? Or because you know how it is with whistleblowers.
Then I let that thing with the players, that package I had, Tom Cousin told me, whenever you want the package, I'll give you all the numbers. He says, I don't want him to be flying all over the place. I says, Mr. Cousin, will you want to keep the numbers? And I says, you promised me, he gave me a letter, promissory letter I can have the numbers back. I got the numbers back. When in 1986, when I get traded to Winnipeg from Quebec, I go to Winnipeg, and John Ferguson's a general manager, and he picked me up at the airport. John, what are you doing? What is this, a general manager picking up a goalie just got traded? He says, never mind, I got to talk to you. He says, we need to talk. I says, I never seen that, a GM picking up a guy.
Usually I'm just some assistant equipment guy picks you up in a little rented car. You're in partially a limo probably, or at least, Mercedes.
No, I'm with John, and John says, okay, look, so-and-so's going to take all your equipment in. I'll take you to the hotel. We're going to eat at the steakhouse. And he says, we got to talk. I sat down with him, and he says, where's the number? I want the books. You're the one that's got the numbers. Gordie Howe called me, and somebody told him that you have the whole shebang, you got the whole thing, the whole lowdown. I says, yeah, I have it, but I says, I'm still in the NHL. I don't want to be blackballed. He says, well, you got one more year. You got two more years. You got one more year after this year. I says, I know, but I says, I just want to have peace. Then after that, I'm going to go to phase 2. And he says, okay, I won't get one vote in the NHL for anything, even though I had 300 wins, more than 300 wins. I played 625 in my career as a goalie in the NHL. I won well over 300. I never got a vote for the
Hall of Fame?
Hall of Fame.
Yeah, you're not going to be in Toronto?
I'm not planning to go to Toronto ever. But that's not the important. The important is the players got their money.
How was this finally resolved? That's probably what everyone's asking.
In 1991, if you ever go and see the settlement of the NHL settlement, Carl Brewer and Gordie Howe are the people of record.
Did it go to court?
Oh yeah, it was in court for 4 years.
Mm-hmm. In America or in Canada?
In Canada,
yeah.
And they had to pay. They had to pay $144 million.
Wow.
To the players.
To make them whole?
Yeah, Johnny Busick, all those guys end up getting checks for $250,000 and all that. And, it was well deserved. Those were the pioneers.
Of course.
But to them, it was like winning the lottery, To them, that was the thing. But I never wanted my name to be mentioned.
I am a hockey historian, and this is the first I've heard the story.
And you see, my dad says, bragging about it's not going to make it better. He says, you got to get to the result you're supposed to, and he says, let it go.
But you're just giving facts. You're not bragging about it. I assume you've told this story publicly before?
Oh, yeah. I explained that when they had that All-Star game in 2007 year with the NHL, with the Trashers.
Here in Atlanta?
Yeah, they had the Trashers game. There was an article in that magazine about it.
Because you hear the story about
Kurt Flood?
Everyone knows the Kurt Flood story. Yours is a little bit similar to what you did for the pensions for the NHL.
I did not blow. I blew the whistle. I told the owner, listen, you got to take that horse. You got to ride that horse because you're a owner.
Yeah.
You're an honest man.
When the team moved to Calgary, you were only with the Calgary Flames for a very short time. You, in fact, were the
I
last...
was 4.5 months.
Okay, 4.5 months in. You were the last original Atlanta Flame to be with the organization. Mm-hmm. When Cliff Fletcher, who stayed with the team as the GM in Calgary, did he get rid of you? Part of the reason because you were...
No. Because when I went to see Cliff wasn't even thinking about the thing with the numbers and all that. We were in Calgary. That was the best thing that ever happened to Cliff Fletcher. He got a brand new contract. Everybody won from that.
Yeah, and 3 or 4 years later, he ends up winning a Stanley Cup.
Yeah, he won the Stanley Cup 3 years after I was there. I got traded. But I went to see him. I traded myself. I called the guy in Quebec. They're in 21st place out of 21 team. And I said, hey, you need to make the playoffs. And, that was how I did it. And Cliff Fletcher says, no. So there was 29 games left when I went to Quebec, and we won 24 out of 29.
Wow. You had to go back home.
So we made the playoff.
I'm just fascinated with the way that you're able to go and keep playing with what you knew.
Yeah, but the whole idea is to keep playing. Because I want to finish my career. I got a contract. I want to finish my career.
If you blow the whistle too loud, you will not be on the ice anymore, correct?
Yeah. I was not. And so anyway, I went to Calgary. I went to Winnipeg. We made the playoff. We were in Washington. John Ferguson comes to me the next morning and he says to me, he says, we're not going to buy your contract. I says, you better talk to your owner because I says, you can't buy it. And you know what? John Ferguson never saw my contract.
But you played that 1 year in Winnipeg, and that was it.
I played that 1 year, went to training camp the next year. Dan Maloney was a coach for Winnipeg. His agent was Eagleson. Do you think I was going to be? Do you think I was going to make that team?
Nope.
So you were done. You went then. Well, I think you played a season overseas in Europe.
I went to Europe after that. Played there. I played 4 games. Blew my left knee, ACL. I says, that's it.
And you were probably mid-30s by that time, early to mid-30s?
I was 37, 38 years old.
37, 38. Wow. Okay, so
yeah.
kind of bring this full circle. There's people that believe the Atlanta Flames left because the support wasn't here. That was never the case.
No. The Flames kept the Hawks in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Cousin tried to sell them. He sold the Hawks to Turner.
Well, part of the fan base too, Dan, wouldn't you say that in any given night, if you're playing the Flyers, 20, 30, 40% of the crowd was there because they wanted to root for the Flyers? That's what I noticed with the Thrashers. When the Penguins came into town, half the rink was wearing Penguin jerseys.
That's a little bit of the scenario with Atlanta becoming a new city.
Yeah.
Everybody moving over here and all that.
But the rink was packed, though. That's the cool thing about it,
we
right?
always had it sold out. We were always sold out. We always had our 14-6.
And the Thrashers used to always draw, really to the last couple of years when that Atlanta Spirit group didn't give a damn about hockey and people stopped coming because the product sucked for 12 years.
Yeah.
When we first started, Atlanta and the Kings were the furthest south of the Mason-Dixon line. Mm-hmm. Now you've got a team in Dallas, Anaheim. You've got 2 teams in Florida. The expansion has been amazing. People love the game, the speed, everything like that. The game has grown, although there are some problems left and right. Would you imagine that when you got here in 1972, that there'd be 2 teams in Florida and there'd be 5 that are south of the Mason-Dixon line?
And look, Tampa won 3 times.
I know.
The whole idea is it's a business.
It's entertainment. You're right.
It's entertainment. It's business. And the people that build the teams the right way are always going to, because it's all down the middle. No different than baseball, no different than football. Goalie centers defense. Goalie centers defense. It's how it's built.
Quarterback, offensive, defensive line. Yeah. If you got those, you can put a product out there.
Basketball, it's your centers.
And a point guard.
Former NHL goaltender Dan Bouchard joining us here at Business RadioX. So there's now talk, there's a couple investment groups that want to bring the NHL back to Atlanta. Your thoughts, will the NHL come back here? Will it be successful in Atlanta?
Yeah, it will be successful. And even they say, they're going to build it here in Johns Creek or something like that.
Alpharetta or Cumming?
There's no problem. The old saying, build it, they'll come. Yeah. You got the right concept, you got the right building. Right now, you built in the NHL teams. Shoot, you should start with the playoff even before you start the season. The amount of good players you can get versus
we saw that with Vegas. Saw that with Seattle. I mean, you could put a good team together from day one.
You get good hockey people that understand the game.
You're looking at probably $1 billion for an expansion franchise in the NHL. Yeah. You've got 2 groups that are willing to spend that money. They're willing to build hockey-exclusive arenas north of the city. I think it would do very, very well.
Once they do this, look, I live stone throw away from SunTrust.
Brave Stadium.
The Brave Stadium, Truist Park. And look what they've done with it. Look what they've done for that area. It's a hub. It's unbelievable.
Live, work, retail. It's all there.
You could do this over here, and the same thing can happen. It's just replicate.
I agree.
The change that I noticed, baseball, just before the Braves moved to Cobb County, you had Philadelphia, St. Louis, Pittsburgh, several different teams, New York, build massive stadiums on downtown city property. What the Braves did, what I thought was very unique about that, they went and bought some land, and they didn't get the same amount of money from Atlanta. They didn't get the right deal, so they went out and got their own property. They built on their land, and they own it, and they get to put the apartments up, and they get to receive all the parking, all the taxes, all the other things that Cobb County worked out with them, and now they own everything.
What is it, a $40 billion business now?
For Major League Baseball?
No, that whole complex over there.
Oh, absolutely, if not more.
Yeah, but not minimum.
I'm sure the Braves right now are going, gosh, we should have bought more land because we could put even more out there. But that concept, that was new to sport, and that is, I think, where I'm sure the Cincinnatis and Pittsburghs of the world were, gosh, I wish we had done the same thing. Instead of being right there in downtown, we could, as a business, own more, receive more, and not have to split this with the cities.
What? I lived there in Cobb County, and you know what? Once the game's finished and all that, you know what? You don't see nothing.
What do you mean, traffic and everything? No problem.
Whew, it's amazing what they did. Everybody says, oh, it's going to be a hornet's nest. You know what? Geniuses.
Well, you've got to follow that example now, because if you're going to pluck down $1 billion for a franchise, you're not going to see a return on that investment for a long time. It's going to be, as Harper said, the land, the retail, the space, everything else around the arena.
It's business.
Yeah.
It's business.
Do you like that Salt Lake City is going to get a club now?
Yeah, they're going to get the
Coyotes.
The Coyotes. Yeah, I think that's a very, 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 very good.
It's a good fit.
Great area.
Yeah. Are there
a
other
great area.
Canadian towns that you'd like to go to? Is there Saskatchewan or someplace?
No. The sad part is that the Nordiques, Quebec's got probably one of the nicest, most beautiful arena in the world right now.
In Quebec City?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
That's state of the
It's
art.
empty. Well, from the NHL.
It's empty for the NHL, but their junior team draws 19,000.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, Patrick Roy is part owner of the team and all that.
Yeah.
But that's a city that should get it, but they're in the wrong parameter of another NHL team. They're 100 miles, 110 miles away from Montreal.
Right. Don't mess with that market. But Montreal isn't the same anymore. They haven't been for years.
No, and you know what? Montreal, it's always going to be
Yeah.
a bad town for hockey because, the two different languages and all that. It's very racist.
Okay.
That's a problem.
Sure.
We're getting close to the end, so I know there's some other topics we want to discuss real quick here. Since your days of playing are over, you've coached and consulted with Life College. They've had a hockey team there I know you're real proud of. You've also worked on studies for brain injuries and so forth.
I did
mentioned your
functional
own.
neurology with Dr. Carrick, where we did a whole bunch of NHL players.
You were studying their brains.
Yeah, we just study. We rehabbed them.
It's rehab, Mike. Yeah.
Okay.
It's not just a study.
We took guys that their career was over. One, 87, his career was over, and we were able to, Dr. Carrick and all that, we took him on the ice, we'd make him do the right things, and they were back playing. Their life is normal. It's like repairing alignment in a car. It's how the brain is.
So rehabbing players that are still young enough where they can continue to play, because I know obviously the NFL's been studying this, concussions and everything, but really with players that have already retired.
Dr. Carrick studied with Dr. Leno and with CTI and all that, and that's a problem.
Well, you mentioned 87. For those that are listening, you've worked with Sidney Crosby. You've worked with some of these players that have been hurt and get hit real hard. And the fragility, if I use that word, before they can get back out on the ice, because the biggest problem is that they hurt their head again.
Yeah, but
right?
once,
the damage that can be done
the
from that.
knowledge out there is so amazing right now. Once you understand what neuroplasticity is a function of your brain being able to remember something. If I tell you I could do a weight system right now, I do weights and I never lose it. You've been training all your life. You ever heard of that?
Of weight training?
Yeah.
Of course I've heard of weight training.
But you ever heard of a weight training that you do and you never lose it?
Oh, absolutely not. No.
Okay, I
Because
found
you have to do it again,
Yeah,
right?
In order
to keep your
I
muscles.
found that animal where you stop for 2 years and you come back 2 years from now and you lift 1900 the last time. Then I know next time in 2 years I can lift 1700.
Okay.
And within 2 months after that, I'm going to be at 1900. You never lose it.
With your brain now, you're being
No.
specific.
It's a weight system. Okay, that's how the brain works.
Right.
Once your neuroplasticity is there, that means all your tissues, your soft tissues and all that, your joints, you never lose it. That's how the brain is. Once you rebuild neuroplasticity in the players, they can go back and play. They're normal. Same thing with militaries. We had people with PTSD, we fixed them. Mm-hmm. But the militaries did not want to pay for them.
Right. It's expensive.
No, it's not expensive compared to all the pills, because the pills, just kills them.
I agree with you there. But you're saying a one-time only would be rather shocking for some people. In some cases, let me finish, as opposed to a longevity of year after year after year of prescription pills. There's different ways of looking at it. I'm not disagreeing with you, Dan. I'm just saying there's different ways of looking at it.
My whole thing in life is looking at people that you look at guys at militaries and all that's got PTSD and all that, and knowing that we fixed them without pills, and the military, the government never wanted to look after them.
Nope.
To me, that's my biggest strategy in my life.
Right. I hear what you're saying with that too. Yeah,
And
we can
and-
fix you,
and
but it's not with pills. It's not with
and
drugs.
it's fixable and all that. And I've seen football players, I've seen wide receiver got fixed and all that, and their lives are back to normal. Their family, they're normal people. Mm-hmm. There's something about life. You're allowed to live your life as long as you wish.
And there's some people that heal in one way that may not be the best.
That's right.
And there's other ways that might be even better than what
Amen.
we know, than what we've been taught.
That's the whole idea.
Yeah.
Dan, I mean, this has been a pleasure for both Harper and myself. It's been a lot of fun. Hopefully you've enjoyed it as well, to kind of reminisce about the old days. I'm looking at the goaltenders that are in the NHL Hall of Fame. You said you had over 300 career wins. Dan Bouchard, should Dan Bouchard be in the NHL Hall of Fame?
Who cares, really? Who cares?
300 wins is almost like, I guess, 500 home runs maybe in baseball.
But to me, that's not something that I really care about, because I was able to do a lot of things that looked after the right people, like the final thing, doing the guys with concussion and all that. Who would have said, well, this guy's a goalie, he's going to help people get better.
Yeah, sure, whatever. But when you do that and you do get better and the word gets out, that's the thing that's the most rewarding.
The thing is, how much did you give back? That's
right.
The whole idea. When John Beliveau came to Boom Boom Jeffrey Hunt's funeral, and we sat down and we had champagne. And I said, what's the champagne for? Oh, he says, for all the guys that got their check.
How about that? For him to recognize that in you.
To me, that was, I says, what do you mean? What check? He says, well, John Ferguson told me you were the guy behind it.
Yeah.
And he says, and Gordie Howe told us the same.
What Kurt Flood did for Major League Baseball free agency, you did for NHL for the pension plan for hockey.
But I didn't waste my career trying to prove I was right. That was my only thing. I was able to have my career.
Yeah. Officially, you're 14 wins shy of 300.
Yeah, but I got 100. You see, I talked with the president of the league, Bettman, and I says, Can I do a deal with you, Mr. Bettman? I'm a businessman. I says, I would like to trade 100 of my ties for wins. And he looked at me and says, you got that many? What do you have that many ties for? You
just need 14 more wins to get to 300.
Well, but in those days we didn't have overtime. We had ties.
How many ties does he have, Dan?
113.
113 ties.
Goodness gracious. Yeah, you just if it's
so
50-50.
I says, just give me. We'll take 100 ties and we'll put.
Yeah, 113. God, they figure if you win half, just a third of those.
Yeah, you're at 320, right? You're 325.
I'm 325.
Well,
you're looking at the amount of games I played, the amount of wins I got, the amount of points. You take the amount of points I got on the amount of games I played. I'm hitting 625. It's not bad.
Yeah.
You were a starting goaltender for a decade in the NHL. I mean,
no. So anyway,
did pretty good.
You see, that's where once you accomplish what you want, the Hall of Fame is not important.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying very thoroughly, and that's
that's not important. People say, "Oh, you're bitter about that."
What doesn't define you?
I don't need another ring.
Well, here's the neat thing about it. I don't call it the Hall of Stats, and if you're just looking at numbers, a lot of guys are in or deserve to be in just because of the numbers. Mm-hmm. But for your contribution to the game and for everything else that was a part of that, for John Beliveau to pat you on the back and say, we're drinking champagne because of you and what you did, and for Bobby Orr and Ferguson and all these other guys to recognize your contribution to the game, that's what the Hall of Fame to me means. And so we need to get a hold of some folks in Toronto, make sure that they put you on the ballot again.
No, that's not important. To me,
yeah, but it is to us.
Not to you, it is to others.
No, that's not important. But the whole idea is that the right people, the guys that were getting screwed by the owners, I don't mind saying that the owners were not, truthful to the players, to the game. They were only truthful to their pockets, to their business, the businessman.
And you found out about that, right?
And,
so something got leaked to you, and you did the right thing with it.
I know, but the whole idea,
it had to be exposed.
The whole idea to be part of the people says, "Oh, you're going to be voted in the Hall of Fame." You know what? One guy asked me one time in Toronto 3 weeks ago when I was there. We were signing autograph. I was with all the boys, and he says, "What happened if you would get a chance to go in the Hall of Fame again?" I said, "I decline it. It's not important to me."
But Dan, there's nothing wrong with tooting your own horn.
I know. No,
why don't you?
The whole idea is. The only thing that really counts in my life is when I die, I go in the Hall of Halls.
Okay.
Well, sure.
That's the only one.
Have you thought about writing a book or doing something like that?
I've been asked 10, 12 times.
And why haven't you?
Yeah, what's wrong
why
with you,
write
Dan?
a book?
Why not?
No, it's not important.
Was it not fun talking?
You know what?
Was this not
I think
fun?
people that write a book is because they need money or they want to have something more. I think
Not always.
It's pretentious.
I read Mikey
No,
Russione's book. Mike wrote a book 40 years after the Olympics. And I had just as much fun reading it. Now, granted, his recollection and his ability to share things, I would have loved to have read it in 1981. But getting the chance to look at it again in 2021 or 22 when it was
I think
released.
to write a book is pretentious.
Well, it's part of your legacy, though. When you're not here,
Who cares? A legacy. You know what? You turn on the computer. You go to Wikipedia and all that. You have it all there. Who cares?
but the story you shared today is not there, and that's a fascinating story.
Dan, seriously.
Yeah, but you know what? The people that knows it, like I sat down about 5-6 years ago with Mr. Cousin, and we had this discussion.
He's still around? Is he still around?
Yeah, he lives in Jupiter.
Okay,
and he
Florida?
has a house in.
The planet. Of course, Florida.
Well, you just said Jupiter. It could be another part of the world that has a Jupiter.
Football player,
Yeah.
you know.
I'm one step below a goalie, aren't I, Dan? And turn to my.
I'm just, but
said,
he
Dan.
lives. He has a house in across from the Marta station. There's a nice golf course there.
Well, I'm
Inside
not going to
the-
say because you
next
made
to-
fun of my Florida.
Next to he's not far from the Peachtree Country Club, so he's got a house here, but he's got a house
Brookwood
also
Station near in Marta?
in
Yeah.
Brookwood.
So here's part of why you have to write the book, because if you don't write it, nobody else is going to have the same facts, the same amount of information. And I'm sure the young players today don't know anything about it. What happened? That you helped a cornerstone, a footprint that is pivotal to the financial future of the league and the players. You're a part of that.
Well,
So write the book, and Mike and I are looking forward to reading it. End of story.
but
Dan, come on.
The thing is, look, you know what? I tested the free agency. I tested the ownership, and look.
And you're all the better.
I got the result I want. Who cares about it?
Yeah, he had a great career.
Quit being so Canadian and write the book.
No. It's
So many people write books.
It's been offered to me.
You would enjoy the experience. Everyone I know that said they didn't want to do it because of the same reasons you're giving, they eventually write the book and say it was a wonderful experience to relive a lot of it, to talk to some old people, to put it together. I think you'll really enjoy it.
You know what? There's a guy that called me about 2 years ago. He did something at a TV show. He asked me about. He got the inside news on because the thing when the players the owners, and how come the Flames became the Calgary Flames and all that. The same story we talk about. And he says, "Why don't you write a book?" I says, "You know what? There's too much going on in my life in writing a book."
Yeah, okay. Hey, real quick, best uniform you ever played in?
The best uniform I ever played in, the nicest uniform I ever played in, was when I played junior. We were called the Sorel Blackhawks. We had the original Chicago Blackhawks shirts.
You like the Chicago shirt?
Jersey,
Yeah, their sweaters were cool. I thought your road Atlanta jerseys, by far, those were better than Winnipeg. And
the red Atlanta jerseys were really, really nice.
Yeah, with the big A on it.
Best goaltender of all time, Dan.
The best goalie, Pelle Lindbergh.
Pelle Lindbergh, really?
Yeah.
Old Flyers.
Yeah, Pelle Lindbergh.
Why Pelle Lindbergh? I wasn't expecting that.
Me either.
He was a perfect goalie. He was Jacques Plante had taken him in, and he had showed him what Eddie Shore says with goalies. Goalie, you wait and you respond. Eddie Shore used to say, you don't go down on your knees before the shot. You wait and you respond. And Pelle Lindbergh was that perfect little.
And his career was tragically cut short when he died in a car accident.
He killed himself in the Porsche. But
yeah,
the whole idea, Pelle Lindbergh, where he was when he was probably the best.
He was always in the right place at the right time, pretty much, right?
Best goaltender today, still playing.
I like Bob.
Really?
Bob, the one playing for the Florida Panthers. Bobrinski, whatever.
Yeah.
The Russian.
Bobrovsky.
Bobby is what?
Bobrovsky.
Top NHL players of all time. Your top 3 or 4.
The top 3 players of all time in the NHL, you're going to have Bobby Orr, you're going to have Gordie Howe, and you're going to have a guy like Joe Sakic.
Ahead of a Wayne Gretzky.
Wayne Gretzky, you cannot leave him out.
Yeah.
Wayne Gretzky.
He's already
but
on
Wayne
the team.
Gretzky, his power was Paul Coffey.
He had a great team around him.
But a guy like Paul Coffey and Messier was...
I would have thought it was Jari Kurri on the line because he just gets the puck to Jari and he closes out 500 goals later.
Jari, but you see, I never was afraid to play against the Edmonton team.
Because they didn't play great defense. They'd give up 6 or 7 goals. They'd score 9.
I knew if I keep them to 2 goals, I was a sure win.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because and when we played, every time we played Edmonton, we go to Edmonton, everybody took Gretzky's wingers away.
Okay.
And it's me against Gretzky and the defense.
Yeah.
We're always a goalie and a defense against Gretzky.
Would you have liked to have Larry Robinson or Bobby Orr with?
You got a guy like Larry Robinson. Larry Robinson's a very special player. You take a guy like Dennis Potvin. A guy like Dennis Potvin with this look. The guy got 100 points in the NHL.
Yeah.
They were great players, but they didn't have the charisma of Bobby Orr. You see,
or the speed. Bobby could go from one end of the ice to the other as good as anybody.
I was there when Bobby Orr was the best, and when they won the Stanley Cup in Boston. And then I played in the era where some of the teams like Flyers and all that. Flyers are a good team.
Yeah.
But the Flyers lost their pizzazz. It's when they played the Montreal Canadiens, they lost in 4 straight.
Right.
Why is that?
They couldn't beat them up.
No,
they had to play beat-up hockey.
That's not. No. That's not what happened. They had no more guts because the Montreal Forum, and they threatened to urine test the Flyers for drugs.
Oops, they couldn't pass the test.
They wouldn't have passed the test.
Right.
They wouldn't have passed the test, and that's how Montreal. Yeah. That's how the Flyers died.
Hey, Mike's a big. We spent a whole segment talking about Al Arbour.
Best coach in hockey.
Al Arbour.
Yeah, best coach in hockey. Yeah, he was here with Atlanta when he started.
Al Arbour was?
Yeah,
player.
Player.
I didn't know that.
No. He was assistant coach.
Oh, I thought he was.
He was one of our coaches, assistant coach, and he was the next guy to replace Boom Boom, but Bill Torrey got him. But let me tell you,
Can you imagine if Al Arbour became the head coach of the Atlanta Flames?
Wow.
Well, we would have won the Stanley Cup.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Because Cliff Fletcher had promised us that if we get, what's his name, the guy that came the last year we were here in Atlanta with the Atlanta Flames. You remember that?
The last head coach for the Flames?
Yeah, the last head coach for the Flames. Now I got you.
You want me to look it up?
I got you in trouble there, huh?
I don't know everything, Dan.
Well, that's in '80, and that's when the Islanders ran the 4. They got the 4 in a row.
Yeah, but Arbour was probably one of the best.
What did he do differently, Dan? What was special about Al Arbour?
He played the game and never forgot what it was to be a player.
Yeah.
And he understood the family around the game, and he understood the togetherness of a team.
Okay. Just able to put that all in one piece.
He was able to put everything together. And Al Arbour...
Al McNeil. Was the last head coach.
Tom Cousin tells me one day at the Peachtree Country Club, he says, Mr. Fletcher told me that this guy that's going to come as a coach, we're going to win the Stanley Cup. And the first time I met Al McNeil, well, his wife had been at my house that afternoon with his 2 kids.
Hey, now, keep it clean here.
No.
What's his wife doing in your house, Dan?
No. Alistair, and Mrs. McNeil. Okay. They were at my house swimming that afternoon. They had just got in town with 3 days, and they were looking around. And my wife says, "We're going to show you around." And they stop at the house.
How about that, Mike? Everyone comes to the Bouchard house. So if you're coming to Atlanta, you got to pass Dan's test.
But I go. So Cliff calls me and he says, "Did you go and meet Hal?" I says, "No, I'm going to stop by. I'm going to drop his family over there." So I go. I drop his family. I just drop his family. His wife says, "Wait, I'm going to go and get Hal." Hal comes to the door. I says, "Hey, how you doing?" Dan Bouchard. He goes, "What?" I says, "Dan Bouchard, the goalie for the Flames." Dan Bouchard. "Oh, yeah."
Uh-oh.
That was the first impression sometimes. And then he says, I says, nice to meet you. Cliff asked me to stop by and say hi to you. Huh? Oh, okay. So I said, nice family you got there. Oh yeah. So this is his son there. I says, that's Alistair, like your same name as you, Alistair. He goes, oh, you know him? Yeah, I says, yeah. Then he turns around and this is Allison, the daughter. I says, this is my daughter. Yeah, I says, Allison. He looks at me, he says, oh, you know her too, huh?
We'll just leave out of the book.
So you think we were going to win the Stanley Cup? You think why by the end of the year, when you're playing a game in New York and you skate on the delay penalty and you look at the bench and there's no head on the bench, no players, you think you're going to win the Stanley Cup?
No, you're not even going to make the playoffs.
Because the players are laughing so loud because that coach is calling the next guy on the ice is Bubba Beck. He's playing for the Rangers.
Wrong guy.
You think you're going to win the cup?
Goodness, very bad.
Dan, this has been the longest show, Harper, we've ever had.
Yeah, how about that?
So we set a record. We could go on for hours, Dan. We're going to...
No, there's all kinds of anecdotes in the game.
Yeah.
I had a great life. I played with Canada in Canada Cup. I was with the Stanley Cup. The Canadian team was 50 goal scorers.
You've played with and against some of the greatest of all time.
Oh, I had a good time.
When's the last time you've had any contact? My idol is Bobby Orr. When's the last time you've had any contact with him of any sort?
I haven't seen Bobby. I saw him 4 or 5 years ago in Boston.
Do you have his phone number?
No.
Not that I'm asking you to give it to me. That'd be kind of cool.
No, I had the guy that's asked me because I have an auto. I'll give you a picture of me and Bobby Orr.
Will you at least think about writing a book? At least think about it.
No, that's complete.
He just did, and that's all he thought.
It's off the table already?
It's completely off, It's just like, no.
How about we get a ghostwriter? You just talk to somebody else and they'll write it.
Not even a ghostwriter. And my brother-in-law asked me, he knew some people in Toronto and some people in London, Ontario, a guy that's a good, very, very good writer. And I'm not interested. To me, that's...
We tried, Harper.
No, people told me, there's money in it. You know what?
Again, we're not doing it for the money or anything else. It's not look at me. It's just, it's history. It's the history of the game.
Come on.
Dan, thank you so much. Appreciate your time. Thank you for coming by today.
I loved it.
We'll still work on the book. After we're done, we'll try even more, and we'll have an update here pretty soon with Dan's recollection of how the league went and life, college, your contribution to not only the NHL but to other people in their lives and turning them around from not enjoying their health to where they can get back on the ice and play.
And win the Stanley Cup.
How about that?
To me, that was the biggest thing. We had Taze, we have a guy called Sid the Kid and all that.
Yeah.
Hey, it's been a great life.
Former NHL goaltender with the Atlanta Flames for all those years, Dan Bouchard. For Harper LaBelle, Mike Salmon. Harper, any parting thoughts?
Let's continue hockey talk. We'll have to do it again.
And me growing in the kingdom. That's all I want. Just keep growing in the kingdom.
There you go. All right. Thanks for joining us, to our listeners.